The Baltimore Ravens head coaching search is officially heating up, and things are moving fast. The team has entered what feels like the second stage of the process, with second interviews underway, and a handful of options beginning to narrow over the course of Monday. Reports started coming in that the Ravens would bring into major candidates for second interviews, and this development is giving fans their first real glimpse into the direction the organization might take. There's a lot happening right now, with coaching openings filling up across the league, including some in Buffalo, which adds an extra layer of complexity to the Ravens' decision-making. With so many moving parts, it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. But the latest updates offer some insight into who could realistically be in the mix for Baltimore's next head coach. First up, the Ravens have reportedly scheduled a second interview with Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. This is happening on Tuesday, and Weaver brings an interesting mix of experience to the table. He's spent time in Baltimore as both a player and a coach, and over the past 2 years, he's served as Miami's defensive coordinator. He also has head coaching experience from his time with the Texans, even though that tenure didn't end successfully. One factor that could work in Weaver's favor is familiarity. Baltimore seems to favor candidates who have some connection to John Harbaugh, whether through coaching under him or another type of professional link. But beyond that, Weaver is a proven leader, someone who motivates players and has a sharp defensive mind. While he may not top everyone's personal list of candidates, the Ravens clearly see value in bringing him back for another round of interviews. There's always a chance that a second interview could lead to a hire, though from an outside perspective, there are other candidates who might fit the team better still. This move shows Baltimore's desire to explore every viable option before making a final decision. Weaver's record in Miami is mixed, particularly this past season, but his earlier success and leadership qualities make him a compelling option to at least consider seriously. The second notable candidate returning for a follow-up interview is Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator for the Bills. This was more of a surprise for some observers, as Brady had been under consideration before the recent upheaval in Buffalo, where the head coach was let go. The Ravens' interest in Brady suggests they are evaluating a wide range of potential leadership styles. Brady has demonstrated offensive innovation in Buffalo, but there are concerns about how much of his success depends on the unique talents of Josh Allen. The Ravens need a system that enhances Lamar Jackson without placing the burden of winning entirely on his shoulders. Looking back at last season, there were moments that highlighted some of Brady's questionable decision-making in a matchup against the Ravens. A trick play nearly backfired, showcasing awareness and strategic choices that didn't always pan out as planned. While Brady's overall offensive numbers are impressive, Buffalo ranked near the top in points scored, rushing, and passing. There are situational concerns that could carry over into Baltimore. The Ravens are trying to avoid a scenario where a coordinator's style requires constant improvisation or puts too much pressure on key players to make every play a highlight. This could limit flexibility in play calling and ultimately affect how Lamar Jackson is utilized. On the defensive side, Anthony Weaver brings a different type of appeal. Despite Miami's struggles this past year, including injuries and roster turnover, Weaver demonstrated the ability to build strong units in his first year with the Dolphins in 2024. His defense ranked among the top teams in both pass and rush defense, showing that he can develop schemes that compete at a high level. Baltimore could see this as an opportunity to add a defensive-minded leader who also has head coaching experience. However, the Ravens' long-term vision may favor bringing in an offensive-focused head coach who can open up the playbook and maximize Lamar Jackson's skill set without leaning too heavily on improvisation. Another layer to consider is the broader coaching market. With openings across the league, some candidates are no longer available, while others might not be willing to leave their current teams until playoff and championship games conclude. The Ravens' approach has been methodical, interviewing candidates like Anthony Campanelli, the Jaguars' defensive coordinator, who has shown remarkable ability to transform his unit. Jacksonville's defense was among the best in rush defense, pass defense, and scoring defense, and they were extremely effective in generating turnovers. Campanelli represents a younger candidate with a mix of experience at both the NFL and college levels, offering versatility and potential for growth. He only has 1 year of play calling experience, but that could be an advantage, providing new ideas without being tied to a rigid system. While some fans might not be thrilled with the early second interviews, this is exactly the type of due diligence Baltimore needs. The team is leaving no stone unturned, exploring candidates with varying strengths and philosophies. Not every coach under consideration will get a head coaching opportunity elsewhere, which gives the Ravens leverage to carefully weigh their options. It's a process that demands patience, but it's the right approach for a franchise that wants to ensure their next hire can lead the team effectively for the next era. Overnight news also indicated that Robert Saleh is no longer in the running for the Ravens' head coaching job, as he appears poised to take the position with the Tennessee Titans. Saleh was a strong candidate in terms of leadership qualities, and his departure narrows the pool further. Still, Baltimore has several viable candidates left, and there is a clear focus on finding someone who can bring stability, innovation, and a long-term vision. Weaver and Brady represent two very different approaches, and the organization will need to balance familiarity, offensive innovation, and leadership in making its decision. As the second round of interviews progresses, it's evident that Baltimore is committed to exploring every credible candidate, from defensive-minded leaders to offensive innovators. The team is considering multiple paths forward. Weaver offers experience and leadership, while Brady brings offensive creativity, but also some risk. The inclusion of young, rising coordinators like Campanelli demonstrates a willingness to evaluate fresh perspectives. This methodical approach, though perhaps frustrating to fans eager for immediate answers, ensures that the Ravens can make a measured, strategic choice that positions them for sustained success as the search continues. The Ravens are also dealing with the reality that the coaching market is shrinking by the day. Another notable name is effectively off the board, as Robert Saleh appears set to take over elsewhere, removing one more option that Baltimore had at least some level of interest in. Saleh was viewed by many as a strong culture builder, someone whose leadership style could command a locker room and bring accountability from day one. Even though he was not universally considered a top-tier option for Baltimore, his availability added depth to the process, and now that depth is starting to thin out. That said, the Ravens are still in a relatively comfortable position compared to some other teams. Not every candidate they are interested in is going to land a head coaching job immediately, and that gives Baltimore the flexibility to be patient. There is no sense of panic inside the building, even if parts of the fan base are starting to feel uneasy. The organization understands that rushing a decision can be far more damaging than waiting an extra week or two to fully evaluate the field. This is especially important when you consider that several highly regarded candidates are still unavailable due to playoff commitments. That playoff factor is critical to understanding why the Ravens are approaching this the way they are. Coaches who are currently involved in conference championship games simply cannot be interviewed yet, which automatically delays access to some of the most intriguing options on the market. Once that window opens, the pool of candidates could look very different, and Baltimore wants to be in position to pivot quickly if one of those names becomes a realistic possibility. This is another reason why the team is conducting second interviews now, gathering as much information as possible so they can compare these candidates against others who may enter the picture later. Anthony Campanelli is a name that continues to generate quiet intrigue. His work with Jacksonville's defense has not gone unnoticed, and the numbers back up the eye test. That unit was disciplined, aggressive, and opportunistic, consistently finding ways to disrupt opposing offenses. What stands out most is how quickly that defense turned things around, going from a liability to a legitimate strength. For a Ravens organization that has long valued defensive identity, this kind of transformation naturally draws interest. Campanelli's age and diverse background also play into the idea that he could relate to modern players while still commanding respect. The appeal with someone like Campanelli is balance. He is defensive-minded, but not rigid, and he has shown an ability to adapt his scheme to fit the personnel available. That flexibility matters, especially in a league where injuries and roster turnover can derail even the best-laid plans. While his play-calling experience is limited, it is still more than some other candidates, and that year of responsibility appears to have accelerated his growth. Baltimore is clearly doing its homework here, and even if he is not the final choice, his inclusion signals that the Ravens are willing to think beyond the obvious names. Meanwhile, the debate between hiring a defensive head coach versus an offensive one continues to loom large. There is a strong argument to be made that, with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, the Ravens should prioritize offensive innovation and long-term stability on that side of the ball. The goal is not just to score points, but to create an offense that evolves year after year without constantly reinventing itself due to Coordinator turnover, that is where some of the hesitation around certain candidates comes from, particularly those whose systems appear heavily dependent on elite quarterback play, rather than structure and adaptability. At the same time, defense remains a cornerstone of Baltimore's identity. The Ravens have built their legacy on physicality, discipline, and situational awareness, and abandoning that philosophy entirely would feel out of character. The challenge is finding a head coach who can honor that tradition, while still embracing modern offensive principles. That balance is difficult to strike, which is why this search feels so complex. Each candidate brings strengths, but also clear questions that need to be answered during these interviews. Another important factor is how a potential head coach would assemble their staff. A hire is never just about one person, it is about the ecosystem they create. Offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, position coaches, and support staff all play a role in shaping the team's trajectory. Baltimore has to consider whether a candidate has a clear vision for their staff, and whether that vision aligns with the organization's goals. This is where experience, even imperfect experience, can be valuable. Someone who has already been through the process understands the challenges that come with leading an entire organization, not just one side of the ball. As days pass, more jobs around the league will be filled, and more candidates will come off the board. That is inevitable. What matters most is that the Ravens do not lose sight of what they are actually trying to build. This is not about winning a press conference or generating short-term excitement. It is about finding a leader who can guide the team through the next phase of its competitive window, maximize the roster's strengths, and adapt as the league continues to change. The interviews happening now are laying the groundwork for that decision, even if the final answer is still a little ways off. There is also a clear sense that Baltimore is comfortable being deliberate, even if that approach frustrates those who want immediate clarity. The organization has earned a reputation for stability and long-term thinking, and this process reflects that mindset. Each interview adds another data point, another perspective, another opportunity to challenge assumptions. Whether the eventual hire comes from this current group or from a candidate still playing meaningful games, the Ravens want to be confident that they explored every realistic option. As the landscape continues to shift and more information comes out, the picture will become clearer. For now, the Ravens remain in evaluation mode, weighing leadership styles, schematic philosophies, and long-term vision. The process is far from over, and with more candidates expected to enter the conversation soon, the next phase of this search could reshape everything we think we know about where Baltimore is headed. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support keeps us bringing you the latest news on the Baltimore Ravens. And hey, drop your take in the comments below. We want to hear from the flock. The digital echo round Baltimore has grown louder, and it carries a single, almost obsessive message: bring Mike MacDonald back, across timelines, comment sections, and fan forums. Raven supporters are flooding social media with pleas and ultimatums, framing the former defensive coordinator as the missing piece to restore an identity they feel has slipped away. It is not an organized campaign, but it feels relentless, emotional, and increasingly impossible for the franchise to ignore. The tone is not nostalgic alone. It is urgent. Fans describe MacDonald as a schematic mind who understood the Ravens' DNA instinctively. Someone who blended aggression with discipline and made the defense feel feared again in the eyes of the fan base. His departure created a void that has yet to be convincingly filled. Every uneven defensive stretch, every moment of hesitation on the field, seems to fuel the same conclusion: things were simply different with MacDonald in charge. What began as casual longing has turned into speculation bordering on fantasy. Some supporters openly question whether ownership could make an unprecedented move, regardless of cost, contract complications, or political fallout around the league. Whatever it takes has become a recurring phrase, less a financial calculation and more a statement of emotional investment. The idea of MacDonald returning is framed not as a step backward, but as reclaiming something that was never supposed to be lost. Around league circles, whispers have started to mirror the noise online. While no concrete talks are known, the sheer volume of public pressure has sparked curiosity about whether Baltimore might explore creative paths to reunite with a coach many still see as unfinished business. Skeptics point out the impracticality of such a move, but optimism often thrives where logic hesitates. For now, it remains rumor, speculation, and digital unrest. Yet in a league where narratives can shift rapidly, the Ravens fanbase has made one thing clear in their minds. The door for Mike Macdonald is not closed. It is being held open with growing insistence. Cost be damned. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay in the loop with exclusive news on our Baltimore Ravens, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what the flock thinks. Drop your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next one.